Hey guys, tonight we slip back through time, not to castles and candlelit banquets, but to the mud-caked, lice-filled mess that was everyday life in medieval Europe. You're not royalty, you're not a knight, you're just you. Dropped straight into a century where nothing smells quite right. Personal hygiene is optional at best. And honestly, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in darkness, not because you forgot to set your alarm, but because there is no clock, no light switch, no gentle hum of appliances, just the rustle of straw, the distant croak of a frog outside your wattle and daub cottage, and the unmistakable smell of something rotting. Spoiler alert, it's you. Your bed, if we're being generous, is a sack of flattened straw, crawling with things that definitely didn't RSVP to your sleepover. Lice are everywhere, fleas too. One of them might even be carrying the plague, but more on that later. You grope around, half asleep, and your hand brushes something cool and round. It's the chamber pot. Yep, you've got company. The floor is compacted dirt, cold against your bare feet, and your only source of warmth all night was the body heat of whoever else crammed into the room with you. Maybe it's your brother, maybe it's your cousin, maybe it's your uncle's third wife's goat. The walls leak wind like a sieve. You're lucky it didn't rain, or did it? Hard to tell when you've got mushrooms growing in the thatch above your head. You groan as you sit up. Your back feels like you've been in a wrestling match with a sack of bricks. And honestly, the sack probably won. Historians still argue whether medieval people genuinely felt more robust because they started hard labor earlier, or whether their bodies simply gave out sooner, like overused farm tools. Either way, you're already sore. There's no good morning. Your breath fogs the air even in summer. A rat scurries across the hearth, chasing crumbs from last night's feast, which, to be clear, was more bark than bite. You eye the corner where the fire died hours ago. The ashes are cold. So are you. You scratch. Everyone scratches. Your scalp, your arms, somewhere less polite. It's like your entire skin is a haunted house of invisible pests. And guess what? No shampoo, no soap, just a bowl of tepid water if you're lucky, and a rough linen cloth that smells suspiciously like your uncle's socks. Outside, the world groans to life, but not before your nose catches a whiff of your own personal stink. It's not your fault. You bathed last month, maybe, depending on the weather. Medieval hygiene wasn't a daily event. It was more like a seasonal suggestion. Some folks thought washing too often was unhealthy. Others didn't have the luxury of clean water or private space. As for deodorant, that's what the rosemary sprig in your armpit is for. Kind of. You stretch your arms and hear a soft pop in your elbow. Congratulations, you're 17 and already creaking like an old barn door. That straw mattress, stuffed with bugs. The blanket, woven from wool and despair. And your only pillow is a sack of hay that gave you a rash 2 weeks ago. You've been pretending not to notice. Your stomach grumbles. Too bad there's no fridge to raid. Breakfast isn't ready, and even if it were, it probably wouldn't be edible by modern standards. But that's the next part of this nightmare. We'll get there. For now, you take a moment. Listen. Outside, a rooster crows, oblivious to the fact that you were already up thanks to a neighbor's coughing fit, and the goat chewing on your foot. Morning has broken, and with it comes a full day of back-breaking labor, moldy food, and the ever-looming threat of dysentery. Cheers. Before you head out, you check the toilet situation. The chamber pot is full, very full, and you don't want to be the one who spills it. You carry it gingerly outside and dump it in the communal cesspit behind the house. It sloshes. You gag. You make a mental note to invent plumbing if you survive this. Back inside, your family is waking up. Dad's already sharpening a scythe. Mom's muttering about the hens. Your little brother's got a new boil on his cheek. Probably nothing, Definitely ignore it. You pull on your tunic, it's coarse, woolen, and permanently itchy. If you're lucky, it only has a few holes. If you're not, you'll discover the larger ones later, in the middle of a rainstorm. Shoes? Maybe. They're wooden and tied with bits of leather that cut into your ankles. You're basically walking around in proto-clogs, and they're about as comfortable as you'd expect. You step outside, squinting at the grey sky. The air smells of manure, chimney smoke, and something fishy you can't identify. You look around at the other villagers doing exactly what you're doing, existing, barely, in a time that historians now admit was significantly less romantic than the movies suggest. And this is just the start. You've got 24 more medieval nightmares to live through. And spoiler alert, none of them involve dragons. But you might meet a leper, a corrupt friar, or a plague cart. Welcome to the past. You're going to hate it here. You shuffle toward the hearth, where the morning fire is struggling to come alive again. Your mother is already there, hunched over a small iron pot, suspended by a blackened hook. Steam curls up faintly, and with it comes the unmistakable smell of disappointment. Breakfast is ready, and by ready, we mean it has reached a consistency somewhere between wet wallpaper paste and medieval punishment. Gruel, the food equivalent of a shrug. Oats, or barley, or millet, or whatever grain was still in the sack, boiled in water and maybe salted if salt hasn't been taxed out of your reach this week. You sit on a stool that wobbles like it's considering retirement. Your wooden spoon, carved by your grandfather during one of his not getting the plague years, scrapes the side of the bowl with a gritty drag. You raise it to your lips. It's hot, bland, and there's something crunchy that shouldn't be. Maybe a beetle, maybe sand. Either way, you swallow it and pretend it's protein. Your little sister eats with both hands, like a raccoon in a mudslide. Nobody bats an eye. You, meanwhile, eye the bread at the center of the table. It's grey, dense, and possibly older than you. Bread in the medieval world is less fluffy baguette and more brick with attitude. Made from rye or barley, sometimes adulterated with chalk or ground up beans to stretch the flour. You break off a piece. It resists. You gnaw. To your left, your uncle sneezes, loudly, into the bread. No one says a word. Outside, the village is waking. Smoke wafts from crooked chimneys. A neighbor yells at a pig that got into their cabbage patch. In the distance, someone is already hammering something. This is the soundtrack of survival. Slurp, chew, sneeze, scold. You'd kill for a cup of coffee, but it won't be introduced to Europe for another couple of centuries. Tea? Still exotic. Orange juice? Absolutely laughable. Your morning drink is ale. Yep, weak ale. Barely alcoholic, but safer than water. You take a sip. It's flat, bitter, and has mysterious floaties. You try not to look. Historians still argue whether most people genuinely drank ale all day or just used it for special occasions. But what they do agree on, water was risky, especially from rivers or communal wells. You'd think you'd get used to drinking something that smells faintly like soggy bread and regret, but nope. You glance at the hearth again. The pot of gruel is now empty. Your mother's licking the spoon, not because she's hungry, but because wasting food is one step above sin. Someone knocks at the door, or rather slaps it. Doors back then are more suggestion than security. Yours is made of split logs lashed together with rope and has a suspicious draft around the bottom. You peek out. It's old Merrick, the neighbor who smells like pickled turnips and once fought a goose for his lunch. He grunts something about rats in the barley bin again, and you nod like this is normal, because it is. You step back inside and prepare for your next task, clean up. Not that there's much to clean. Bowls get scraped, spoons get wiped on sleeves, and the table gets cleared with a swipe of the hand. The dog waits underneath, hoping for a miracle. He gets a bit of crust and a flea you accidentally flung in his direction. Then it's time to pack your lunch, if you can call it that. A small cloth bundle with more of the same. Bread, maybe a hunk of onion, a knob of hard cheese if it's a good week, Nothing fresh, nothing moist, just enough to keep you vertical. You tie the bundle to your belt and try not to sigh too loudly. Outside, the air is already thick with smoke. Not the cozy kind. This smoke smells like someone tried to cook despair. A neighbor has burned their breakfast again, which, considering how long it takes to grow and harvest the grain, is the 14th century equivalent of torching your paycheck. You wave and get a nod in return. No one's chatty in the morning. Everyone's focused on not dying before noon. You head toward the fields, but not before passing a group of village children poking at something in the mud. It's a dead crow. They're trying to decide whether it's an omen or lunch. You keep walking. The dirt path is more muck than road, and your wooden shoes splash through puddles with a kind of resigned slap. The sun barely peeks through the grey clouds, casting everything in a gentle gloom. And that's when you realize something. Breakfast was the best part of your day, and that's deeply upsetting. You glance down at your tunic again. It's already stained, already itchy, and the hem is unraveling. But what can you do? Clothes are precious. You might only own one set, maybe two, if you're a real trendsetter. Washing them is an ordeal involving boiling water, lye soap that could peel paint, and a river that may or may not curse you with leeches. And forget about laundry machines. Even the concept of clean is wobbly here. Stains are proof you've lived, or at least, proof you've spilled turnip stew on yourself repeatedly. As you walk, the air shifts. You catch a waft of something sweet. Is it flowers? No. It's just manure from the pig yard, but your brain is so desperate for anything pleasant that it latches on. You smile for half a second, then step in something squishy. Breakfast is officially over, and so is any chance you'll feel clean today. That ache in your jaw isn't going away. It's been there for days now, dull, persistent, and growing meaner by the hour. At first, you thought it was from chewing that brick-like bread, but now your whole face feels hot, and there's a sour taste in your mouth that no amount of stale ale is washing away. You run your tongue along your teeth and wince. One of them is loose, and not in the wiggly childhood way that ends with a coin under your pillow. No, this is the kind of loose that says, I'm infected, and I'm coming out soon, with or without your permission. Time to visit the barber surgeon. Yes, you heard that right. Barber, surgeon. Because in the medieval world, the guy who trims your hair is also the one who slices open abscesses, sets broken bones, and, on a fun day, saws off infected limbs with a hacksaw and a prayer. You arrive at his shop, a low timber-framed building with a faded red and white pole out front. That iconic barber's pole. It's not just decoration. The red represents blood, the white, bandages, and the pole itself, a reference to the stick you squeeze while your veins are being opened for a good old-fashioned bloodletting. Stepping inside, you're greeted by the metallic tang of old tools and the thick aroma of vinegar, sweat, and something vaguely minty. The barber surgeon himself looks up from a man whose head he's halfway shaved. He grins. His teeth are worse than yours. You explain your problem, sort of. You point to your face and groan. He nods sympathetically, then immediately grabs a pair of iron tongs. No anesthetic, no sterilization. Just bite down on this leather strap and try not to scream too loud. Historians still argue whether these tooth extractions were performed with any training or just enthusiasm. What's certain is that you're about to find out firsthand. The tongs go into your mouth, and for a second you think, maybe this won't be so bad. It's bad. He yanks. Your vision goes white. There's a wet pop, and something warm splatters onto your chin. You may have blacked out for a second there. When you blink back to life, he's holding up your tooth like a trophy. It's brown, cracked, and dripping. You think he's going to throw it away. Nope. He adds it to a small jar of other teeth. A souvenir collection. A tally of customers. Maybe he's building a necklace. No one asks. Your reward is a swig of something fiery from a wooden flask. It tastes like turpentine, but you welcome the burn. He slaps a cloth to your bleeding gum. mutters something about not eating hard bread for a few days, as if you have options, and turns back to his half-shaved patient. You stumble outside, mouth throbbing, head spinning, and somehow, impossibly, grateful. Because that tooth was killing you. Literally. Left alone, it could have turned septic, spread infection, and taken you out by the end of the week. You walk back down the road, passing a group of chickens pecking at something unspeakable. There's no real pharmacy here. No painkillers beyond ale, willow bark, or prayer. And forget about brushing your teeth. There's no toothpaste. No brushes. Some people chew twigs or rub ashes on their gums. Others do nothing and hope for the best. Your neighbor, Elsa, swears by gargling warm milk with crushed mint. Another swears by putting a live frog in your mouth and chanting backwards. Did it work? No one knows. The frog was never seen again. You pass by the village well. A young girl is hauling up a bucket, arms shaking. You nod. She nods back, then spits something red onto the ground. Looks like she visited the barber too. Back home, your mother eyes your bloody chin and sighs. She wraps a cloth around your jaw and hands you a spoonful of broth. It's more water than meat, but you sip it carefully, hoping not to disturb the gaping hole where your tooth once lived. Your uncle tells a story about the time his tooth got pulled and the barber hit a nerve that made his eye twitch for 2 years. You're not sure if that's a joke. He doesn't laugh. By midday, the swelling has started. You look like you've been in a bar fight with a donkey and lost. The pain pulses in time with your heartbeat, but at least the infection is out, or so you hope. Historians still argue whether these procedures helped or simply delayed the inevitable. But in a world without antibiotics, a successful tooth extraction was practically a miracle. You try to lie down and rest, but the straw pokes your tender face. You end up half sitting, mouth open, drooling slightly. Outside, someone is shouting about a missing goose. You close your eyes and try to block it out. And that's when the barber's apprentice shows up at the door. Apparently, you dropped something in the shop. He hands you a small cloth. Inside is your tooth, wrapped up, a keepsake, for luck. You stare at it, baffled. He grins and walks off. You look at the tooth again. You're definitely not keeping this. The morning fog hasn't lifted, and neither has your sense of dread as you dress yourself, if you can call this dressing. Your tunic, still damp from yesterday's drizzle, smells like a mix of wet sheep and boiled cabbage. Not because you bathed in soup, but because everything here is soup eventually, especially clothes. You tug the wool garment over your head, and the fabric clings in all the wrong places. It's itchy, scratchy, possibly alive. This is your only tunic, and it hasn't seen a washboard since the last full moon, maybe 2. Laundry is a community event, and unless you're up for wading into the river with lye soap and frostbitten fingers, you're living in whatever scent this thing decides to ferment into. You reach for your hose, basically medieval leggings. One has a hole big enough to qualify as a window, and the other is held together with patches from 3 previous generations. You tug them on anyway. The fabric groans. You do too. Underwear? If you're lucky, it's a linen loincloth. If not, well, it's just you and the breeze today. Speaking of breeze, the moment you step outside, a gust of wind shoots up your tunic like it's got a grudge. Goosebumps. Everywhere. And now comes the best part. Sheep fat. You dip 2 fingers into a small clay pot near the hearth. It's filled with congealed animal grease mixed with herbs. You smear it under your arms, behind your ears, and across your neck like some greasy medieval cologne. It masks the worst of the odors and allegedly keeps fleas away. Not that you can tell. You still itch. Historians still argue whether these grease and herb concoctions were medicinal or just wishful thinking. Some contained lavender or rosemary, which we now know have mild antibacterial properties. Others were less helpful, like goose droppings mixed with ash. Hey, when the bar for clean is this low, anything goes. You lace up your shoes, or what passes for shoes. Wooden soles strapped with leather thongs, often handmade by someone with more enthusiasm than skill. They clomp more than they walk, and forget about left and right. They're identical. One size fits none. As you trudge down the muddy path, the villagers glance at you, nodding politely. You nod back, trying not to trip over your own shoes. Everything you wear feels like it wants to fight you. In the distance, a flock of geese honks with purpose. One breaks from the pack and lunges. You sidestep like a pro. Experience. Last month, you lost a chunk of your hose to a particularly angry gander. Lesson learned. The morning chores begin. You're assigned to muck out the animal pens. The pigs greet you like old friends, loud, hungry, and unapologetically filthy. The smell is unbearable, but at this point your nose has all but surrendered. You grab a wooden shovel and get to work, sloshing pig waste into a heap that steams ominously in the chill air. By midday, your tunic is damp with sweat, your hands are blistered, and your face is decorated with what you hope is mud. You take a break near the well, wiping your brow with a corner of your sleeve, which now smells worse than the pigs. You're a human stew of sweat, grease, and barnyard perfume. A neighbor approaches. He's got a fur cap and a thick beard and somehow smells worse than you. He nods, then reaches into his belt pouch and pulls out a dried turnip, offers it to you like it's gold. You chew it slowly. It tastes like sadness. You both sit in silence, watching the chickens dig holes like they're burying secrets. A dog walks by with someone's shoe in its mouth. No one reacts. The sun creeps across the sky. You return to your chores, hauling water, chopping wood, dragging bundles of fire-damp straw into storage. The tunic rubs under your arms. The hose slips down your leg. You have to retie your belt 3 times. Medieval fashion, you realize, isn't about looking good. It's about not freezing, not scratching too hard, and not accidentally stepping on your own hem while carrying a basket of onions. But let's not forget the headwear. Today, you wear a coif, a soft linen cap tied under the chin, mostly to keep lice from falling into your eyes. Doesn't always work. You adjust it constantly, and it still rides up your skull like it's trying to escape. For women, headwear is even more elaborate. Wimples, veils, layers of cloth pinned like origami. Not because it's stylish, but because a woman's hair, uncovered, is said to cause distraction, temptation, or plague, depending on whom you ask. You pass by the local priest, who eyes your bare ankles disapprovingly. You nod politely. He mutters something about modesty and moves on. You consider asking if he wants to trade outfits. He probably doesn't. Your clothes weigh on you, literally. Wool gets heavier when it's wet, and surprise, it's raining now. Not the polite drizzle. This is sideways, wind-whipped, bone-chilling rain. You pull your cloak tighter. It's not waterproof. It just exists, like a soggy hug from a wet dog. By evening, you're soaked, shivering, and scratched raw from woolburn. Your belt has chafed your hips. Your tunic smells like old onions. But you made it through the day, dressed, functional, and only marginally infected. You step into your house, steam rising from your body as the hearth glows faintly. You peel off your outer layers. Every stitch clings like a toddler afraid of bath time. You hang them near the fire, knowing they won't dry by morning. You sit on your straw bed in your undertunic, scratching absently, and watch a spider crawl across the ceiling beam. You wonder if it's judging your outfit. Probably. And then you realize something. Tomorrow, you get to wear it all again. There's no delicate way to say this, so let's just rip off the bandage. You're about to poop in a hole. If you're lucky, the sun isn't even up yet, but nature calls, and your chamber pot from last night, full to the brim and already attracting flies like it owes them money. So you gather your courage, step outside into the morning gloom, and trudge toward the village outhouse. Calling it a structure would be generous. It's a 3-walled shack made from warped wood and wishful thinking. The 4th wall, non-existent. Who needs privacy when you've got an audience of cows? The door doesn't close properly. It just leans, like it's tired of being involved. You duck inside, careful not to touch anything. The seat is a splintered plank perched over a pit that goes down into, well, no one knows exactly. You'd swear something down there growled once. You position yourself, balancing like a tightrope walker over the abyss. It smells like a witch's curse. You try to breathe through your mouth, which, in retrospect, is a mistake. Your eyes water. A fly buzzes too close for comfort. And just when you think you've reached rock bottom, you glance to your left and realize there's no cloth, no paper, no nothing. Just a smooth stick. The medieval equivalent of a reusable wipe. You suddenly understand why people in paintings never smile. Historians still argue whether all villages had communal latrines or if most folks just used the woods. Some towns had public pits, but many people went wherever they could. Fields, alleyways, rivers. That's right, rivers. The same place you sometimes collect drinking water from. Suddenly, that weak ale isn't looking so bad. You finish your business, shimmy back into your scratchy hose, and stagger out, blinking into the pale dawn like you've survived something harrowing. You have. And if you're a woman, the whole situation's worse. No privacy, no sanitation products. Monthly cycles managed with scraps of cloth, moss, or, if you're particularly desperate, soft wood. You once heard of a woman using sheep's wool and hope. It's enough to make you cross your legs and cry. Back at the house, someone's emptied the chamber pot by flinging its contents into the trench that runs down the center of the village road. That's not a metaphor. It's an actual open-air gutter. You dodge a stream of questionable liquid as it meanders past your feet. A dog wades through it like it's a spa day. Your shoes are soaked again. Of course. You pass the baker's boy squatting behind a fence. He gives you a nod. No shame. Everybody squats. Toilets, as you know them, are centuries away. Even castles aren't that much better. They've got guardrobes, which are essentially stone chutes that drop straight into the moat. That romantic medieval fortress? Yeah, it smells like a sewer. You hold your breath as you pass the butcher's shop, not because of the meat, what little there is, but because his privy is right next to the entrance. Someone's in it, loudly. You duck into your own home again and make the mistake of stepping too close to the hearth. The heat stirs the scent in your clothing, smoke, sweat, and something vaguely fungal. You suddenly feel like a walking compost pile. A neighbor pops in with a chicken under her arm and a frown on her face. She's here to trade eggs for turnips, but first she needs to use your privy, which is to say, the bush behind your house. You gesture vaguely. She nods. Business as usual. One of the children runs inside shouting that he found a clean spot behind the hay cart. You mentally file that away for tomorrow. Maybe. If it doesn't rain. You can't help but long for something soft. Toilet paper, a seat with a lid, maybe a little fan that hums gently while you check your phone. But here, the only fan is the wind, and it's blowing the wrong way. Someone sneezes nearby, loud, wet. It echoes across the fields like a warning. You remember how the local friar once claimed that too much bathing weakens your humors and opens the body to evil. He hasn't bathed in a year. He also hasn't blinked in days. Coincidence? You decide you're done with thinking and slink off to the fields for your next chore, but not before kicking mud off your clogs against the threshold. A splash hits your shin. You sigh. The day rolls on, but the memory of that outhouse lingers, a trauma tattooed on your soul. Even the pigs keep their distance. You scratch an itch behind your knee and glance down. Something's moving. That's fine. That's normal. Probably. You step back into the wind, cloaked in layers of wool, grime, and the unsettling realization that this is just how things are. There's no deodorant, no soap, no private bathroom with a scented candle and mood lighting. Just you, a hole in the ground, and a whole lot of faith. And somewhere, in the back of your mind, a question itches louder than your flea bites. How is anyone still alive? You're parched. Not the I skip my morning latte kind of parched. You're standing in the middle of a sun-drenched field, mouth dry as straw, lips cracking, and the warm ale from breakfast feels like it evaporated out of your pores by mid-morning. You need water. But here's the problem. Water, in the medieval world, is not your friend. You trudge toward the village well, hoping it hasn't been fouled again. Last week, someone's goat carcass turned up in there, and the flavor hasn't quite recovered. The rope creaks as you lower the bucket, hand over hand, your palms already raw from farm work. The water sloshes up, cool, clear-looking, even a little inviting. You hesitate, because you know better. It might look clean, but your stomach remembers the last time. The cramps, the sweating, the week of praying you wouldn't die crouched over a ditch, begging the heavens for a second chance. You're still traumatized by how many shades of green a person can turn in a single day. Historians still argue whether medieval folks drank mostly water or weak beer out of necessity. Some evidence shows water wasn't always avoided. Fresh springs and deep wells were relatively safe, but open sources, rivers, streams, shallow wells, that's a roulette game with dysentery on every chamber. You glance around. A dog is lapping water from the same bucket you were about to sip. It makes eye contact with you, unbothered. You sigh, step back, and walk toward your second option. Small beer. Small beer is what happens when beer and boredom have a baby. Brewed weak, with just enough alcohol to kill off some bacteria. It's the medieval hydration standard. Children drink it. Pregnant women drink it. You drink it, and still somehow manage to feel thirstier afterward. At home, your mother keeps a ceramic jug of the stuff near the hearth. She offers you a cup, and you gulp it down. It's lukewarm, yeasty, and faintly sour. But it's not pond water, so you thank her with a nod. There are other options for hydration, but they're all worse. River water? That's where people bathe, dump waste, wash clothes, and occasionally lose body parts. Rainwater, only if it's caught fresh, and you trust whoever's pot it landed in. Snow? Sure, if it hasn't already been trodden on by livestock. Still thirsty, you try chewing a piece of cucumber from the garden. It's soft, bland, and somehow manages to dehydrate you further. You spit it out discreetly. As you head back toward the fields, your neighbor Agnes waves you over. She's boiling water in a blackened pot, adding crushed herbs and something suspiciously like moss. Medicinal tea, she says. You nod. She insists you take a sip. It tastes like boiled socks. You thank her anyway. Nearby, a monk is drawing water from his own deep well. He claims it's blessed. He also claims the moon controls toothaches and that bees are little flying monks. You're not sure what to believe anymore, but you make a mental note to ask if he'll let you fill a jug next time. On the other side of the village, the town crier announces, shouting from atop a barrel, that 2 people have fallen ill from bad water again. That makes 5 this month. 1 blamed the devil, 1 blamed a French merchant. Both ended up on leech therapy. Yes, leeches. Because when your guts are churning and your skin's turning grey, obviously the solution is to let a slimy worm drain your bad blood. The barber surgeon keeps a jar of them next to the pickled piglets. You saw it once. You haven't slept since. The church, of course, has its own ideas. Water sickness is punishment for sin. Maybe gluttony. Maybe pride. Maybe you just didn't pray hard enough before scooping a cup. In response, they've scheduled another holy procession next week. More incense, less answers. You pass a group of children playing with sticks and chasing chickens. One stops to drink from a puddle. You want to scream. Instead, you keep walking. By evening, the thirst returns full force. Your tongue feels like it's wrapped in wool. You eye the jug of small beer again, now warm from sitting too close to the fire. You drink it, even as your stomach growls in protest. It's not refreshing, but it's safer than the well. Probably. You lie down that night, lips dry, head throbbing, and dream of a cold glass of water, clear. Ice cubes clinking. Maybe a lemon wedge. You wake up coughing, and the ceiling drips on your forehead. Perfect. There's water everywhere in medieval life. In the mud, in the air, in the leak above your bed. But when you're actually desperate for a safe sip, it's like the whole world is playing a cruel joke. You roll over, wishing for plumbing, a Brita filter, and one of those giant tumblers people carry to yoga. But all you've got is a chipped wooden cup, a half-empty jug of sour beer, and the faint hope that tomorrow no one throws a dead cat into the well. You've barely wiped the sleep from your eyes, or what passes for sleep when your bed is a nest of itchy straw and your roommate is a goat when it's time to work. There's no snooze button in medieval times, no lazy scrolling on your phone, no hot shower to ease you into consciousness, just a rooster that sounds like it's dying dramatically every morning at dawn, and the unmistakable smell of wet hay and pig breath. You step outside, stretch, and immediately regret it. Your back cracks like old parchment. Your arms are sore from yesterday's wood chopping, and your hands are stiff with blisters. Doesn't matter. The work isn't going to wait. Today you're headed to the fields, like most folks in your village. You're a peasant, or more poetically, a serf, which means you don't own the land you work. The Lord does, and everything you grow, half of it goes to him. The other half, probably to taxes or rent, or the priest who insists the church needs another gold cup. You shoulder your tools, an iron-tipped hoe, dented sickle, and a makeshift basket held together with string and hope. The earth is hard today, dry, cracked, unwilling. You jab it anyway, over and over. Sweat beads on your brow before the sun even clears the treetops. You think farming is romantic? Think again. There's no tractor, no irrigation. You break clumps of soil with your hands. You plant seeds one by one. You pray for rain, but not too much. You dread drought, pests, mold, and rabbits. Your life revolves around the weather forecast. And by forecast, we mean staring at the sky and muttering. A child nearby cries out. His job is to chase birds away from the new seeds. He's using a rattle made from bones. You wave. He waves back, then trips in a molehole. By midday, your knees ache, your back throbs, and your clothes are soaked through. You take a short break and reach into your lunch pouch. A hard crust of bread, an onion, and a sliver of cheese so old it should have a name. You eat slowly, carefully. You don't want to break another tooth. Your neighbor, Bert, sits beside you and chews on something unidentifiable. Might be squirrel, he says. He's not joking. He never jokes. He once ate a pine cone on a dare. The work resumes. This time, you're harvesting barley. The stalks slice at your arms, leaving little welts. You sneeze from the dust. The sun climbs higher, and your shadow disappears. Time moves differently out here, stretching, melting, blending 1 hour into the next. And just when you think you might pass out, the reeve shows up. He's the Lord's man. Not a noble himself, but close enough to carry a whip and wear smugness like a cape. He points at your basket and grunts. Not enough barley. You try to explain the soil's gone sour from overplanting. He doesn't care. He marks something on his tally stick and moves on. You stare at the dirt, defeated, and still, you work. Historians still debate whether medieval peasants truly worked dawn to dusk, or had more seasonal downtime. Sure, winter brought shorter days, but during planting and harvest, there's no rest. Your survival and the Lord's wine stash depends on it. And not all work is in the fields. If you're a craftsman, you're hammering shoes in the forge, surrounded by sparks and sweat. If you're a tanner, you're knee-deep in animal hides, soaking in urine. If you're a miller, you're dodging accusations of stealing flour. And if you're a servant in the manor, well, good luck avoiding backhanded insults and actual backhands. Women's work? Equally brutal. Brewing ale, spinning wool, weeding gardens, raising children, hauling water, feeding livestock, all while being told you're too loud for someone who owns no land. By late afternoon, the sun begins to dip. Your arms barely respond. Your fingers are caked with dirt. A bug climbs up your sleeve, and you don't even flinch. You've accepted the crawling. You load your basket one last time and carry it back toward the village. Your stomach rumbles, but you ignore it. First, you deliver your share to the Lord's steward. He inspects it like it's a gift from the heavens, then tells you it's adequate. You smile like it's a compliment. You pass by the village well again. A woman is dumping a pail of dirty dishwater into the trough. A pig drinks from it. You stare. You walk on. The sun sets in a blaze of red and orange. Beautiful, yes, but it also means you've only got a short window to clean up, eat, and collapse before doing it all again tomorrow. You arrive home, drop your tools, wash your hands in a basin that smells like herbs in last week's stew. You sit on a stool that wobbles like a drunk, and your mother hands you a bowl of hot mush. You eat, you scratch, you sigh, and you think, only 40 more years of this. Then remember, most people don't make it that long. You stretch your sore legs, glance at your calloused palms, and marvel that you're still upright. You survived another day of honest labor, mud-soaked, spine-bent, soul-weary work. And guess what? No days off. You're just settling into that end-of-day slump, half asleep with a spoon of barley mush hanging from your mouth, when you hear the knock. It's not a gentle, hello knock. It's the heavy, impatient thud of someone wearing iron on their fists. You already know who it is before you even reach the door. The taxman. Technically, he's the steward of the local lord, an official collector, draped in patchy furs and smug authority. He doesn't come alone. Behind him are two muscle-bound lads with cudgels and the same haircut. Badly. Evening, the steward says, pretending it's a friendly visit. Just a reminder, tithe is due. You nod and step aside as he pushes past you like he owns the place. Because in a way, he does. Or rather, the Lord does. And you, my friend, are just renting life here. The steward inspects your home like he's on a royal tour, peeks into the pantry, prods the cheese wheel, lifts your straw mattress. Then he stands upright and clears his throat. The Lord thanks you for your service, he says, extending his hand. You fish out what little coin you have, 2 clipped pennies, both so worn you can barely see the king's face. It's not enough. You knew that before you opened your palm. He frowns, then smiles tightly. We'll take it in grain, he says, pointing to your corner barrel. And that chicken. You want to argue, but you know better. Last time someone in the village tried to push back, they ended up in the stocks, left to sit in the cold with a sign reading "Thief," while children threw turnips at their head. The chicken squawks as it's hauled away. You try not to think about the eggs you won't have next week. Historians still argue whether the feudal tax system was this predatory in every region. But one thing's clear, your surplus isn't really yours. Between the church's tithe, the Lord's rent, and unexpected war contributions, you're lucky to keep a quarter of what you produce. And even that can be bargained away with one bad harvest. The steward leaves with your grain, your chicken, and a nod that feels like a slap. His men trail behind, one of them munching your only apple like he brought it from home. You sit in stunned silence. Your mother mutters a prayer. Your uncle just spits in the hearth. You think the worst is over, but then you remember. Taxes aren't just in food. There's the corvée, forced labor for the Lord. Might be repairing his fences, fixing roads, or digging drainage ditches for his manor, for free, with your own tools. And if you're late, fined. There's a clattering outside. The reeve, yes, him again, is checking house lists. He marks down who's paid, who hasn't, and who's suspect. What that means changes weekly. One time, it meant someone looked at the Lord's horse funny. You shuffle outside and nod at him. He doesn't nod back, just writes something in charcoal and moves on. You wonder, briefly, if moving to another village would help, but you remember what happens to strangers in small medieval towns. Suspicion, blame, sometimes accusations of witchcraft, just because your hair curls oddly. You think of the nearby forest, wild, dark, whispering with possibilities. You could run, live off roots and stolen bread, be free. But then you remember the wolves, the bandits, the bitter cold. Freedom, it turns out, is mostly theoretical. Back inside, you try to salvage dinner. There's a bit of stew left, mostly broth, a few limp greens, and a chunk of something chewy. Your little brother asks where the chicken went. You lie. You settle in near the fire, watching shadows dance on the wall, the orange glow flickering like it's unsure of itself. The wind howls outside. You wonder what the Lord is doing now, probably feasting, drinking wine from a jeweled goblet, eating roasted meats with his fingers, laughing as a lute player strums in the corner. His dogs probably eat better than you do. You scratch your arm absently. Another flea bite. They seem angrier tonight. Someone knocks again. You freeze. But this time it's just your neighbor, Agnes. She heard the taxman was taking chickens and wants to trade a sack of turnips for a loaf of bread before hers disappear too. You make the trade. Fair, quiet, no fuss. She asks if you've seen her son. He hasn't come back from the woods. You haven't. She nods, thanks you, and disappears into the dark. You add another log to the fire. Your hands shake a little from fatigue, or fear, or both. It's quiet now. You stare at the flames and think about how your life is measured not in days or years, but in baskets of grain, missing livestock, and how often the taxman comes knocking. You lean back against the wall, eyelids heavy, the floor beneath you cold despite the fire. You dream of a world where your labor is yours, where your food is yours, where your chicken still lives. The next morning, the market smells different. Not the usual stale fish, dung and despair combo. No, today there's something sharper in the air. Fear. You feel it in the way people clutch their baskets tighter, in the hushed voices at the well, and in how old Merrick, who usually shouts about his carrots, just mutters and keeps his eyes low. It started 2 days ago. A cough, then a rash. Now a fevered boy lies under damp cloths in the back of his family's hut, and no one will go near him, not even his dog. You overhear whispers as you pass the baker's stall. They say it's the pestilence again. No, just swamp fever. Didn't Agnes's son come back from the woods with black spots? You pretend not to listen, but your ears are on fire, because you know what this might be. The plague. And just like that, the already cracked veneer of a medieval village life begins to splinter. Historians still argue whether rural outbreaks spread through fleas on rats, contaminated grain, or even air. What's undeniable is that once it starts, panic is faster than infection. You watch as the market slowly empties. The tanner closes early. The fishmonger packs up with trembling hands. The priest strolls through, swinging a censer full of smoke, mumbling Latin. No one understands, but everyone suddenly respects a lot more. You continue your errands, gripping your basket tight. You need salt, a new spindle, maybe onions if the seller hasn't fainted. But your thoughts are elsewhere. You remember the stories from when you were small. Plague carts rolling down muddy roads, bells tolling endlessly, entire families vanished in a week, priests in long robes with beak-like masks, stuffed with herbs to keep out bad air. You thought they were just bedtime tales, scary but distant. Not anymore. You bump into a boy your age, Thomas. His hands shake as he tries to sell you dried apples. He whispers, "My sister's got lumps. They're under her arms." You drop a coin into his hand and walk faster. At home, your mother is already preparing. She tacks dried lavender above the doorway. She burns rosemary in the hearth. She mutters prayers you haven't heard since last winter's pneumonia scare. Your uncle sharpens a blade, not for protection, but in case he needs to cut someone off, literally, like amputate. Because, hey, that's a thing now. Dinner is quiet. The stew tastes like ashes. Your little brother doesn't eat. You glance at his face. He's pale, sweating. Just tired, you tell yourself. Just tired. The next day, Someone boards up their windows. By the third day, someone's missing from the market. No explanation, just gone. Rumors bubble like soup over a fire. Someone saw a raven land on the priest's roof. A bad omen. Another swears the sickness came from imported cloth. One man says it's punishment for dancing too much at last month's feast. You quietly vow never to dance again. You avoid crowds. You sleep near the door. You refuse to touch the communal ladle at the well. You start noticing the details. How fast people step away when someone coughs. How no one touches coins directly anymore. How even the dogs seem more cautious. And then, late one night, the bell tolls. Once, pause, twice. Someone has died. You lie in your straw bed, heart pounding, listening to the silence that follows. Not even the rats scurry tonight. The next morning, the air feels heavier, not from weather, but from grief. And worse, the unknown. That's the real plague, not the boils or the blood. It's not knowing whose breath might end you, whose skin hides the next black mark. You wear garlic around your neck. A neighbor wears a pouch of crushed emeralds. Another carries a dried frog in his pocket for protection. You don't ask. The village healer, if you can call her that, prescribes hot vinegar baths and chants. She charges extra for goose feathers. You try to laugh. You fail. At one point, you pass by the reeve. Even he looks rattled. His boots are muddy. His tally stick is missing. You wonder if he fled his duties or lost count of the dying. You catch the eye of a child peering from behind a shutter. His face is too thin. His hand clutches a cloth tight to his mouth. You walk home slower than usual. That night, you help your mother seal the windows with old cloth and dried herbs. The fire crackles. The shadows grow long. You don't speak much. No one does. Then your little brother coughs. Just once. Soft. But everyone hears it. You freeze. And in that stillness, in that heart-stopping moment of silence that follows a single cough in a house already preparing for the end, you realize something terrifying. It's here. You don't sleep that night. You lie still in the straw, listening to your brother's breathing. It's shallow, ragged. Every exhale feels like it's stealing something from you. Hope, maybe, or time. In the glow of the dying hearth, your mother whispers prayers, long ones, winding and desperate. Your uncle sharpens a stick into a makeshift spear. For what reason, you don't know. He says it's just in case, which only makes things worse. By morning, the cough has spread to you. It starts as a tickle in your throat. You pretend it's the smoke, or the dust, or your imagination, but it builds, slow and heavy, like fog inside your lungs. Your skin feels hot. Your joints ache. You sit up, and the world spins. The room smells like sweat and time, and someone's burnt the porridge again. You are unwell. In any other time, this would mean soup, warm blankets, and a sick day with bad TV. But in medieval times, this is potentially fatal. You don't tell anyone, not yet. You sip water and pretend it's helping. You force down a piece of bread that tastes like sand. Your mother eyes you suspiciously but says nothing. You make it through the morning by sheer stubbornness. But by midday, the chills set in. You're cold. Freezing, actually. But your skin is hot to the touch, and your shirt sticks to you with sweat. You wrap yourself in every blanket you can find, but nothing stops the shaking. Your teeth chatter so loudly, you're worried they'll crack. You've seen this before. Last winter, it took the blacksmith's wife. She coughed until she couldn't breathe, turned grey, and slipped away in her sleep. They burned the bed after. Historians still argue what the most common cause of death was in medieval Europe. Was it starvation, disease, war? The real answer may simply be everything at once. But illness, unpredictable, invisible, relentless, was always near, especially when you had no doctors. Well, not real ones. You have a local healer, known mostly for treating sheep and drunk uncles. She visits that afternoon, sniffing the air like a bloodhound and poking you with fingers that smell like onions and clay. She presses a hand to your forehead, tuts, then pulls out a pouch of dried herbs. She boils a concoction that smells like burned grass and regret. You're instructed to drink it, breathe the steam, and then think happy thoughts. You ask her what it is. She says it's lung-healing tea. You ask again. She says fermented crow's foot and nettle. You stop asking. The potion tastes like boiled fence. You throw it up immediately. She nods approvingly and says, "That means it's working." After she leaves, you curl back into your blanket cocoon, trembling. Your mother sponges your forehead with rainwater. It's cold, comforting, useless. Outside, the bell tolls again. 1 ring, pause. 2 rings. Someone else has died. You don't ask who. That night, your fever climbs. You sweat through your bedding. You hallucinate. You see shadows move on the ceiling. You hear your name whispered by the walls. At one point, you cry out for your grandmother. She's been dead for years. The next day, your throat closes up. You can barely breathe, let alone speak. You wave off food. You try to sip broth, but even that tastes like ash. You realize how quickly your body is shutting down, as if your bones are tired of being bones. And yet, your brother is sitting up now, pink-cheeked, eating again. You don't know if that's a good sign, or just timing. Your mother looks at you differently now. She touches your hair gently, like she's memorizing it. She wraps your blanket tighter and murmurs something about God's will. You'd be comforted, but she said the same thing to the neighbor's son the day before he died. That evening, the priest stops by. He doesn't enter. He just stands outside the door and offers a blessing through the crack in the wall. He holds up a crucifix and mumbles something about forgiveness. Then he lights a sprig of sage and throws it on your doorstep. You are being spiritually fumigated. You close your eyes and try to sleep. You dream of fire, of water, of air you can't breathe. You wake up gasping, clawing at your blanket, and realize you've made it through another day, just barely, and that's the game here. There are no antibiotics, no hospitals, no IV drips or oxygen tanks, just boiled leaves, prayer, and a bucket at your bedside for when things get really bad. You stare at the rafters, dizzy with fever. The shadows move again, or maybe they don't. You're past knowing. And as your family drifts into restless sleep around you, you think to yourself, a simple cold could kill you, and tonight, it just might. You wake up to the sound of firewood snapping in the hearth and the faint scent of rosemary smoke hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, you're not sure where, or even when, you are. Your mouth is dry. Your limbs are stiff. But you're alive. Barely. Your fever broke sometime in the night. Your skin is clammy, your head throbs like it's been beaten with a pewter mug, and your throat feels like it's been scraped with a sickle. But still, you're breathing. That counts for something here. Your mother notices. She kisses your forehead and mutters thanks to Saint Roch, the patron saint of plague victims and possibly dogs. You're not sure why dogs are involved, but you're grateful all the same. She offers you a bowl of broth, warm, salty, and surprisingly palatable. You sip it slowly, painfully. Even swallowing feels like a small victory. You've survived the worst, maybe, or just the beginning. You glance over at your little brother. His cheeks are flushed with color. He's outside again, chasing a chicken with a stick and laughing like he didn't just nearly die a few days ago. Children bounce back, apparently. You just bounce. The village, though, hasn't bounced. It's quiet. Too quiet. You sit up on your straw pallet and notice something strange. The church bell hasn't rung today. Not once. No calls to mass. No tolls for the dead. Just silence. That's almost worse than the sound. You ask your mother about it. She avoids your eyes. Later, as the sun rises and the mist lifts off the fields like a ghost shaking off its sleep, You decide to walk outside. Slowly. Each step feels like your bones are full of gravel. But you need to see it. You need to know. You reach the village square. It's nearly empty. Two women in hoods whisper to each other over a basket of withered carrots. The baker's stall is unmanned, bread covered in a thin sheet of linen and dust. A dog noses around a pile of discarded onion skins. The air smells of something metallic, like rust or old blood. You hear hammering near the edge of town. You follow the sound and find three men building what looks like a long, shallow trench. A pit. There's a cart beside them, wooden, stained, ominously silent. One of the men glances at you and quickly looks away. You recognize him. The miller. His wife had a cough. She doesn't anymore. They don't speak. They just keep digging. You turn around and shuffle back home, stomach twisted. You lie down again, exhausted. It's strange, surviving something in a time when most people don't. There's no joy, no triumph. Just waiting, watching. The next morning, the bell tolls again. A low, flat ring that sounds more like a warning than a farewell. Church attendance doubles, not out of devotion, but desperation. People confess things they don't even believe just to hear the priest say, absolved. No one makes eye contact anymore. No one shares spoons. You go too. You sit in the back, wrapped in your threadbare cloak, inhaling smoke and incense until your head swims. The priest preaches on humility, sin, and penance. He shouts that God is testing the faithful, that suffering is a sacred burden, but his eyes dart nervously to the door every time someone coughs. The fire crackles in the small altar brazier. The windows are fogged. Somewhere, a baby wails. You wonder if God is listening. Outside, you notice a group of flagellants has arrived in the village. They walk barefoot, shirts off, backs streaked with fresh wounds they inflicted on themselves in a public display of penance. They chant in a droning rhythm. Mercy, mercy, mercy. They beat themselves with cords and sticks, hoping pain will scare the sickness away. You stand and watch. No one stops them. No one dares. Historians still argue whether the church's power helped stabilize medieval society or simply fanned the flames of fear. It gave comfort, yes, structure, but it also offered condemnation at the drop of a feather, and the feathers were always dropping. The local friar is kind, but stern. He visits homes at night, offering blessings and warnings in the same breath. One family in town, accused of harboring sin, has been forced to sleep outside their house for a week until the air is clean again. Their youngest child is missing. The church controls more than prayers. It controls behavior, thought, even your calendar. You work 6 days and rest on the 7th, not because your body demands it, but because the church calendar says you must. Holy days, feast days, saint days. You barely understand them all, but you observe every one with the same fearful reverence you give to thunder or wolves. You pray because you're told to. You kneel because you're afraid not to. You cross yourself when you pass the cemetery. Lately, that's been every day. Back home, your mother has started leaving bread at the threshold, a little offering to Saint Sebastian. She says it brings protection. You say nothing. Your uncle sharpens his knife again. He says nothing too. And you, sitting in the smoky warmth of your crooked, creaking home, realize that the church, the fear, the fire, they're all part of the same machine, a way to explain the unexplainable, to structure the chaos, to give meaning to a world that gives you so little. You pull your cloak tighter, you close your eyes, you mouth the words to a prayer you're not sure you believe, and still, you whisper it. Because in this world, belief might be the only thing keeping you alive. Let's get something clear. If you're a woman in medieval times, life isn't just hard, it's stacked, and not in your favor. You wake before dawn, always. There's no sleeping in while your husband sharpens tools and mutters about taxes. No leisurely bath or solo coffee moment. You've got kids to keep alive, clothes to mend, water to haul, and approximately 17 things to stir, scrub, or sweep before breakfast. And let's talk about that water haul. You walk to the village well with a clay jug perched on your hip like a living burden, navigating mud, dogs, and suspiciously human-shaped puddles. You pass by other women doing the same. No one saying much, just a sea of tired eyes and chapped hands. Back home, the fire needs rekindling. Always. The hearth is your domain, and by domain, we mean prison. It's where food happens. It's where cloth gets boiled and babies get born. It's where soot coats your face like makeup from the underworld. You stir a pot of something green and bubbling. Might be cabbage, might be despair. Then it's on to cleaning the rushes, those fragrant floor coverings made of straw and herbs that soak up every footstep, spill, and secret. You pluck out bits of food, rat droppings, and what you hope is just mud. Replace them with new rushes. Repeat every week, or month, or whenever your mother-in-law complains. Outside, your husband is fixing a fence that didn't need fixing. It's an excuse to avoid the smell of boiled linen. He returns for lunch, if he remembers, and scarfs down stew you've been tending since sunrise. He compliments it by not spitting it out. High praise. Historians still debate just how much power women had in daily life. Some say they ran entire households, managed finances, and even ran alehouses. Others argue that the average woman was tethered to childbearing and survival, her voice barely heard beyond the walls of her cottage. Both might be true, depending on the woman and the week. And yes, childbirth. Let's talk about that festive activity. There's no doctor, no sterile bed, no epidural, just other women, boiling water, clean rags, and an old midwife with shaky hands and too many stories. You grip the edge of the bedpost, bite down on a cloth, and scream into a world that couldn't care less. If you survive the birth, and that's a big if, you're expected to be up within days, cooking, cleaning, milking goats, and nursing a baby while hiding the pain in your eyes. The church might even demand you wait 40 days before you're considered clean again. Until then, no communion, no mass, no community. That's fine. You're not in a social mood anyway. Oh, and if your husband doesn't like your attitude, well, legally speaking, he can discipline you. A slap here, a shove there, so long as he doesn't kill you. That's considered impolite. You're told it's your job to keep the peace at home, to be obedient, silent, grateful. You try. But some days, when your fingers crack from spinning wool in the cold and your hips ache from giving birth too young, you wonder what life might have been like if you were born a man. Your best friend Lisa wasn't so lucky. Married off at 14 to a man who smells like pickled onions and anger. He doesn't hit her, but he yells. A lot. She's already lost 2 children to fever. She talks less now. Her laugh is quiet. You miss it. And yet, women work miracles. You take spoiled barley and turn it into ale. You grow herbs that stop infections. You sow a hem in the dark by feel. You deliver babies. You know how to read the weather by smell. You can skin a rabbit, bake a loaf, predict a fever, and weave a basket all before noon. No one calls you a hero, but you are one. Every now and then, a girl from the manor stops by. She's wearing a dress so clean it almost glows. She talks about her embroidery, her new ivory comb, her future husband, some noble boy with his own land. She's 15. You try to smile. You could envy her, but you don't. Because you know she's being shipped off soon to marry a stranger twice her age and probably die bearing his children. Marriage is rarely about love here. It's a transaction. Dowries, land, livestock. Your husband might have chosen you because your father had good pigs. Romantic, right? Still, you make it work. Some days there's laughter. Some days your husband brings home wild mushrooms and they don't kill you. Some days the baby sleeps through the night and your hands don't ache quite as much. You sing while stirring stew. You dance alone in the field when no one's looking. You find joy in stolen moments. Evening falls. You light a tallow candle and mend a sock. You hum a lullaby and comb your daughter's hair with fingers instead of a brush. She asks you what the stars are made of. You tell her the truth: fire and dust and maybe a little magic. She laughs and kisses your cheek. You whisper a quiet promise to teach her everything you know. Not just how to spin wool or bake bread, but how to endure, how to stay strong in a world that rarely gives women a break. And as the candle flickers low and your body curls around sleep like a cat to warmth, you think, this life may not be fair, but you're still here. You're 7 years old and already tired. There's no toy box, no playground, no nap time, no cartoon mouse singing the alphabet, just a bucket, a splintery broom, and instructions to keep the chickens from pooping in the root cellar again. You rise when the rooster does, not because you're an eager early bird, but because your mother shouts your name the moment the sun kisses the horizon. Your tunic is too big, your shoes don't match, and your face still has dirt from yesterday's adventure into the cow field. Congratulations, you're a medieval child. You're not coddled, you're useful. First task of the day, water hauling. The jug is half your size, sloshing cold and heavy against your chest as you stagger back from the well. It spills on your feet, turning the already mucky path into something a hippo would hesitate to cross. Your arms ache, your back protests. No one cares. You try to sneak a break by sitting on a log, but your uncle sees you and barks, "What are you, a lord?" You jump back up, cheeks burning. Next, it's helping your sister turn the butter churn, a task so dull it makes watching moss grow seem action-packed. But you churn, and churn, and churn some more. Mid-morning, you help chase the geese out of the herb garden. One of them turns on you, again. His name is Gerald. He hates you. Historians still argue whether geese were used as medieval guard animals. Based on your bruised shin and shredded dignity, you vote yes. You wipe your nose on your sleeve. No one has handkerchiefs. You fall once in the mud and no one picks you up. You laugh about it anyway. You're a kid. Resilience is your only currency. And then comes your education. If you're lucky, and we mean really lucky, you might be sent to the local church school. It's 1 room, 10 benches, and a priest who smells like onions and fear. He teaches you to read Latin prayers you don't understand and write letters using a quill that leaks like your nose in winter. But most kids, no school. Illiteracy is the default. Your alphabet is the carving on your wooden spoon and the knot in your father's belt. Still, the village priest takes special interest in you. He invites you to help clean the altar. You go once, he stares too long. You don't go again, and no one talks about it. You get back to work. Maybe you're herding goats, picking bugs off cabbage, or collecting firewood in a forest that feels a little too quiet. You carry sticks that leave splinters in your palms. You watch the older kids do harder jobs and hope your body catches up to your ambitions soon. Lunch? If it happens, it's a hunk of bread and whatever wild greens your sister foraged that morning. You chew slowly, not for taste, but because you know there's nothing else. You share half with your dog. He appreciates it more. By early afternoon, your energy starts to fade. But there's no nap. Instead, you're asked to help sort dried beans or scrub pots with a stone that scratches your knuckles. You hum a little song under your breath. You made it up. No one taught you music, but the rhythm keeps you going. Sometimes the older kids tease you, call you rat boy because you once caught a mouse and kept it as a pet. It died 3 days later. You buried it under the pear tree and still visit the spot when no one's looking. Evening comes and you're sent to help prepare dinner. You stir the stew, mind the fire, set out bowls. You dream of dessert. There is none. You settle for licking the spoon. Once, there was a festival in the village. You wore a crown made of leaves and danced in a circle while someone played a crude fiddle. You'd never felt so full of joy. You think about that day often, but mostly, your days are work. And if you get sick, well, people hope for the best. You've seen 2 kids disappear this year already. One had the cough, the other fell from a cart. No doctor, no medicine, just whispers, shrugs, and a few extra prayers. And yet, you play, in the dirt, with rocks and sticks. You pretend you're a knight or a dragon. You challenge the neighbor's kid to a beetle race. You hide behind hay bales and jump out to scare your sister. You get scolded, but her laugh makes it worth it. You scrape your knee and don't cry. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because you're learning. Tears don't solve much here. Still, you hug your mother tight before bed and whisper about the story of the moon that she told you last week. She repeats it, her voice low and warm. For a moment, you're not just surviving, you're safe. You crawl onto the straw mat beside your siblings. One of them already drooled into your shared pillow. You don't mind. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, you'll be up before the rooster again. And you'll do it all over. Dirty, tired, sore, and still dreaming. Because even in medieval times, childhood finds a way. You're hungry. Not the kind of hungry that's fixed with a snack. This is the deep, aching kind of hunger that wraps around your ribs and whispers, "You're not eating today." Again. Still, you head toward the hearth as the midday sun filters through the cracks in the walls. Your mother's bent over a blackened pot, stirring something thick and vaguely brown. The air smells odd, earthy, sour, and just a little smoky. Today's lunch is stew, but stew is a generous word. It's a waterlogged mystery. Some cabbage, a handful of barley, one carrot chopped into the thinnest slices imaginable, and the remainder of yesterday's crusty bread floating like a shipwreck. There's also a bit of meat, maybe. It's grey, could be pigeon, could be squirrel, could be not meat. No one asks questions. You just eat. You dip your wooden spoon into the steaming bowl and lift a clump to your lips. It scalds your tongue and tastes like boiled sock with a hint of leaf. You chew slowly, hoping it fills more than just your mouth. Across the table, your sister picks at hers, trying to fish out the largest barley grains like their treasure. Your uncle slurps noisily, wiping his chin on his sleeve. The baby cries. You pass your crust to your mother. She pretends not to notice the gesture, but you see her eyes soften. This is a good day. You have food. Sort of. Most days, lunch is more improvisation than meal. Whatever's left over from last night. Watered down, stretched thin, flavored with garlic or herbs to hide the fact that it's basically hot water with a dream of vegetables. Historians still argue what the typical peasant diet actually looked like. Bread, porridge, legumes, root vegetables, yes. Meat? Rare. And when it did appear, it was often questionable in both origin and freshness. Salt was gold, spices were legends, sugar was a fantasy. Sometimes you get lucky. A neighbor traps a hare. Someone trades a few eggs for a hunk of smoked fish. Once, a traveling monk gave you a whole wheel of cheese. It smelled like feet and hope. You still dream about it. But more often it's thin stew and harder bread. Oh yes, the bread. It's a staple. Coarse, dense, and tough enough to hammer a nail. Rye, barley, or if you're lucky, wheat. The loaf is dark, slightly sour, and studded with surprises. Bits of chaff, the occasional pebble, a few weevils if no one caught them during kneading. You chew carefully. Dental emergencies are expensive, and you already donated a tooth to the barber surgeon this week. You finish your bowl, wipe it clean with a crust, and pass it to your little brother. He licks the inside like a bowl of ice cream. He's 4. He doesn't know what that is. Then someone knocks on the door. You tense. It's just Agnes. She's brought nettle greens from her garden. Enough for dinner, maybe. In return, she asks for a few spoonfuls of stew. You agree, because in this world, sharing is survival. You hand her a bowl. She hands you a bruised apple. You both smile like it's Christmas. You nibble the apple later. It's soft, a little mealy, but sweet. You close your eyes and savor it, letting the sugar sit on your tongue like a secret. The stew pot gets scraped clean by evening. Not a drop left. Someone even licks the ladle. You wonder what tomorrow's meal will be, if there is one. Some days, there isn't. You remember last winter when the snow came early and the cellar ran empty. Everyone pretended to be full. Meals were just stories then. Remember that roast duck at the midsummer feast? Someone would say. You'd all close your eyes and imagine the crackle of skin, the fat dripping, the scent of rosemary. Your belly stayed empty, but your mind got fed. Once, you tried to steal a turnip, just a small one. The reeve caught you. He didn't whip you, just made you clean out the pig troughs for a week. You never tried again, but you still think about that turnip. Tonight, your mother adds a few wild greens to the pot and boils them into a thin soup. You eat with a hunk of dry bread and pretend it's enough. Your sister laughs and calls it noble stew. You all laugh. It's either that or cry. The candle flickers low. Your stomach rumbles. You lie down and turn over in the straw, trying not to notice the gnawing emptiness inside. Hunger isn't a crisis here. It's a companion, a rhythm. You expect it. You endure it. Sometimes it passes. Sometimes it doesn't. But tonight, at least, you're warm. Your bowl wasn't completely empty, and you have a few apple seeds tucked in your pocket, just in case. You've somehow made it to mid-afternoon without keeling over, which is a feat in itself. After the morning's work and a lunch that barely qualified as solid, you're given what passes for a break. But don't get too excited. Leisure time in the medieval village doesn't mean hammocks or hobbies. It means maybe you get an hour where no one is actively yelling at you to carry something heavy or chase a goat out of a vegetable patch. Still, it's your time, and you're going to use it. You kick off your wooden clogs and stretch your legs in the patchy grass behind your hut. The sun's peeking through the clouds like it's thinking about being generous. A breeze stirs the stench of the nearby pigsty just enough to keep things lively. Two kids run past you, chasing each other with sticks. One shouts that he's a knight. The other insists he's a wolf. Neither stops to question why a wolf would carry a stick. That's the beauty of imagination. You smile, then cough. A deep, rattling cough that reminds you you're not quite over whatever nearly ended you last week. But hey, you're upright, and that's worth celebrating. So, what can you do for fun? There's stoolball for one. It's a game that involves a bat, a ball, and vague rules that change depending on who's holding the bat. Some say it's an ancestor of cricket. Others say it's an excuse for teenagers to hit things and flirt under the guise of sport. You grab a flat piece of wood and join a few others in the field. The ball is a rough leather sack stuffed with rags. The first throw hits you in the shin. The second bounces off your head. You laugh until someone gets smacked in the nose and swears loudly enough for a passing friar to glare judgmentally. Good times. After the game dissolves into bickering and bleeding, you wander over to the gathering near the well. A group of older villagers are gambling with dice made of bone. One man accuses the other of cheating. A chicken is offered as a bet. It escapes mid-wager. Chaos ensues. You sit on a barrel and watch, amused. Leisure here is homemade. If you're a child, it's mud pies, races, and pretending the barn is a castle. If you're an adult, it's gossip, cards, and the sweet relief of not moving for 5 minutes. Historians still debate how much actual free time medieval peasants had. Some say Sundays and religious holidays offered rest. Others argue the work never truly stopped, only paused long enough to keep you from collapsing. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, moments carved out of necessity, stolen like bread from the Lord's pantry. You pull out a small wooden flute you carved months ago. It's cracked, slightly off-key, and adored by absolutely no one. Still, you play. A shaky tune warbles into the air. Your sister claps politely. The neighbor's dog howls. Later, someone brings out a drum, a hollow log with stretched animal skin, and the village pulses with an offbeat rhythm that could be music if you squint your ears hard enough. People dance, not well, but joyfully. Children jump in circles, hands linked, singing about a fox and a duck, and something that sounds suspiciously like badger stew. An old woman starts telling a story about a selkie who tricked a fisherman. Halfway through, she forgets the ending and just makes one up. It's perfect. Someone passes around a bottle of something strong. You take a swig. It tastes like regret and fermented shoes, but it burns the edge off your sore throat, so you don't complain. As dusk begins to fall, the energy fades. People drift back to their homes, cheeks flushed, limbs sore, but spirits lifted. These are the little moments that stitch life together. The dancing, the laughter, the games with no prize but a good bruise. You sit on your doorstep, watching the sky turn to lavender. The fields beyond sway gently in the wind. Somewhere, an owl hoots. Somewhere else, someone's still arguing about whether that chicken was rightfully won. You lean back and breathe. For a few brief hours, you weren't just a serf, a survivor, or a walking laundry list of symptoms. You were just you, laughing, moving, singing off key into a world that doesn't care if you're perfect. Tomorrow, you'll wake up to work, aches, and the constant itch of wool underwear. But tonight, you played. And that, in medieval times, is a victory. It starts with a scratch. Just a little one, behind your knee, right under where your hose bunches up. You rub it absent-mindedly, thinking it's nothing. But by midday, you're practically digging a trench in your own skin. The itch is relentless, deep, personal. And you're not alone. Everyone's scratching, all the time. Behind ears, under sleeves, through hair, and in places polite company pretends not to notice. It's just the way things are. Welcome to medieval pest control. Your home is alive, and not in a whimsical, enchanted forest kind of way. More like, oh, great, something just moved in the thatch roof again. Between the fleas in your mattress, the mice in the floorboards, and the lice that have declared your scalp sovereign territory, it's a miracle you've got any skin left. The day starts with you shaking out your tunic. Something falls out. Could be a beetle, could be an acorn, could be both. You step into your wooden clogs and feel something squish. You don't investigate. Outside, the neighbors are having their own issues. Agnes is banging a broom against her wall, yelling about the rats again. One scurried over her baby's cradle last night. Her husband swears he saw two sharing a cabbage. You nod solemnly. That's not even the worst rat story you've heard this week. You try to keep your house clean, but clean is a relative concept when your floor is dirt and your ceiling drops spider webs like it's trying to decorate. You sweep the rushes again, replacing the matted ones with fresh straw and herbs. Rosemary, mint, maybe some lavender if you're feeling fancy. It smells nice for about 6 minutes, then everything reverts to its baseline funk. Smoky stew with undertones of barnyard. Fleas are the constant. You scratch until you bleed. Your sister swears by smearing boiled onion water on her ankles. Your uncle prefers vinegar and ash. Your mother wears a pouch of camphor on a string around her neck. You've tried all three. You still itch. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly aware of the connection between fleas and disease. But they definitely knew the fleas were there. Some blamed bad air. Others blamed sin. You blame the cat who keeps sneaking into your bed and coughing up a tailless mouse. Speaking of cats, they're both loved and hated. Some villagers believe they ward off evil spirits. Others think they are evil spirits. The church occasionally accuses them of consorting with witches. Meanwhile, your household cat, named Mudball, mostly consorts with your stew when no one's looking. But you tolerate Mudball because he hunts rats, and the rats are bold. One sauntered across your table last night during dinner. Your brother threw a spoon at it. The rat caught the spoon and glared. There are other unwanted guests too. Silverfish in the pantry, weevils in the flour, slugs in the bedclothes after a rainy night, a lizard once curled up in your boot. You only noticed after you put it on. You make do. You boil your sheets when you can. You dry your tunic near the fire to smoke out the vermin. You comb your hair with a fine-toothed bone pick and flick the lice into the fire. You smear goose grease behind your ears because someone swore it drives the little devils out. It doesn't, but you keep doing it. Once, a traveling merchant offered flea powder, a mix of chalk, crushed mint, and something he wouldn't name. You saved up for it. It worked for 2 glorious days. Then the fleas came back with a vengeance, bringing friends. You sit by the hearth, legs folded, idly tracing a scab on your ankle with one dirty finger. It's shaped like a bird or a fish. You consider naming it. The fire crackles. Something thumps above, probably a weasel in the roof again. You don't look up. Even at night, they come for you. You tuck the blanket tight around your legs. You itch. You shift. Something scurries. You hold your breath. Your dreams are twitchy. Your sleep is shallow. And in the morning, you wake up to fresh bites, a new rash on your arm, and the comforting knowledge that medieval pest control isn't so much about eliminating the problem as it is learning to coexist. So you scratch, and keep scratching, and hope the weasel upstairs eats everyone tonight. It starts with a shout. You're walking back from the stream, bucket sloshing, shoulders aching, when you hear raised voices near the village square. Someone's arguing. That's nothing new. But this time, it's not about chickens or stolen turnips. This time, it's serious. You approach slowly. A small crowd has formed around 2 men in heavy cloaks. One of them, the reeve, holds a parchment. The other is a stranger, tall, silent, armed. There's been a crime, they say. A sheep has gone missing from the Lord's field. That's not a minor thing. In this world, a missing sheep is theft. Theft from your Lord. Theft from the system. And theft, in medieval times, can carry a punishment that makes you wish for fleas again. Everyone looks around nervously. No one confesses. Of course not. That would be suicidal. So the reeve announces the next step. Trial by ordeal. Your stomach drops. Historians still debate how often trial by ordeal was actually used, or whether it was more symbolic, used to pressure confessions. Either way, when it happened, it was terrifying. They drag a young man forward, Joran, the potter's son. He's barely 15, thin as a broom handle, and already pale with fear. No one saw him near the sheep, but someone heard he was hungry. That's enough. There will be a trial by water. They tie his arms with rope and march him to the pond behind the chapel. You follow, like everyone else. Not because you want to, but because not watching would be suspicious. Eyes are everywhere. The rules are simple. If he floats, he's guilty, rejected by the water, a sign he's unclean. If he sinks, he's innocent, but he might still drown. You watch as they lower him into the brown, murky water. It smells like dead fish and something worse. He kicks, sputters. He floats. A little. Guilty. The reeve announces it. There's no cheer, no celebration, just silence, broken only by the sobs of Joran's mother. The sentence: 1 week in the stocks, 2 fingers removed. Mercy, they call it. After all, he could have been hanged. You walk away feeling sick, because even if he did steal that sheep, you know why. He was hungry, and now he's maimed. Justice in medieval times isn't blind. It's blindfolded and swinging wildly. You think back to last winter, when a woman in the next village was accused of witchcraft because her garden grew too well. They drowned her in the river, said the water would tell the truth. The water always lies. At home, you find your uncle sharpening a blade. Again, he's not worried about sheep thieves. He's worried about bandits. They're real. And they're getting bolder. You hear stories of men with swords and nothing to lose, raiding villages for food and coin. They wait until nightfall, then strike. No walls, no guards, just fire and chaos. Your uncle has a plan. If they come, you run to the woods and don't look back. You nod, but part of you wonders, run where? Even inside the village, danger is everywhere. Step on the wrong land. The Lord's men can beat you for trespassing. Say the wrong thing about the wrong person, accused of slander, or heresy, or both. One time, a boy your age broke a fence. The Lord's steward made him repair it and pay a fine. He had no money, so they took his family's only goat. That goat fed 5 people. You sit by the fire that night, watching the flame dance in the blackened hearth. Someone's playing a fiddle in the distance. The tune is mournful, the mood is heavy. Your mother whispers a prayer under her breath. Not for Jorin, not even for safety, but for mercy. Because here, the smallest mistake can become a sentence. And guilt doesn't matter nearly as much as timing. You lie down later, heart pounding, eyes wide in the dark. Outside, the world is quiet, too quiet. You clutch your blanket and remind yourself, don't steal, don't speak out, don't be seen, just survive. Night in the village isn't peaceful, it's uncertain. The sun dips below the horizon like it's clocking out early, and suddenly everything familiar turns unfamiliar. The path you walk every day, now it's just shadow. The trees, no longer quaint, they're hulking, whispering things, and the air, cold, still, like it's holding its breath. You bar the door with a wooden beam, more out of ritual than safety. It won't stop anyone determined, and you know that. Everyone does. Because when night falls in the medieval world, the danger isn't just superstition, it's real. You huddle near the hearth with your family. The fire crackles low, casting flickers of orange across the soot-stained walls. Your mother mutters a prayer. Your uncle sits with his back to the door, knife in hand. The youngest is already asleep, mouth open, snoring softly into a blanket that smells like old potatoes. The silence outside is louder than noise. And then, a howl, long, distant. Definitely not a dog. Wolves are real here, not just bedtime stories. They live in the forests, hunt in packs, and aren't shy about sniffing near village edges. Last winter, they took a calf right from its pen. You remember the blood in the snow, the way the farmer didn't speak for a week. Tonight, you don't hear more howls, which is almost worse. Then, footsteps. Fast, unsteady, close. You freeze. They pass your cottage. A figure running, alone, cloak fluttering, gone in a heartbeat. Your uncle peeks through the shutter. Just a drunk, he says, but his voice is tight. He doesn't put the knife down. You try to sleep, but it's impossible. Not with the darkness pressing against the walls, not with the creaks in the rafters, not with the memories of that bandit attack 2 villages over. They waited until the moon was high, then set fire to the barns and took everything that moved slower than a horse. Some say they were former soldiers. Others say they were never soldiers, just men with nothing left to lose. You glance at the door again, still barred, still thin. Historians still argue whether crime was rampant or merely exaggerated by chroniclers. But when you live it, you don't care what the scrolls say. All you know is that no one's coming to save you. There's no night patrol, no guards, just neighbors with pitchforks and poorly aimed stones. And if it's not wolves or thieves, there's still the darkness itself. You've heard tales. Everyone has. A spirit that walks the lane past the well. A woman in white who appears when someone's about to die. Glowing eyes in the forest. You scoff at them in daylight, but not now. Not while lying still under a threadbare blanket, listening. Scratch. Scratch. Something in the thatch above your bed. A rat? A bird? You tell yourself it doesn't matter, but you tuck the blanket tighter around your feet, just in case. Your mother adds another log to the fire. It hisses, pops, throws off a brief flash of light. You cling to that light like it's a shield, because when it goes out, there's only darkness, and what hides inside it. The dog growls once, then nothing. You pull the covers to your chin. You think about the time your cousin went out after sunset to fetch water. He never came back. Some say he fell into the stream and drowned. Others say he met something. No one searched after nightfall. That's the rule. You don't leave the house once the sun goes down, unless you're prepared to face whatever's out there, and no one ever is. You drift off eventually, but your dreams are restless. You run through the forest barefoot, chased by faceless men. You trip, you scream, you fall, you wake with a start. The fire is out. The room is pitch black. You hold your breath. Then, a sound, soft, delicate, like a hand brushing against the wall outside. Just once. Then silence. You stare at the ceiling for what feels like hours, afraid to close your eyes. Because here, night isn't quiet. It's just waiting. The rooster crows, but you're already awake. You didn't sleep well, not after the night sounds, not after that brush on the wall that could have been wind, or something else. The fire died hours ago, and your breath clouds the air with every exhale. You rise stiffly from your mat, bones creaking like old hinges. You're not even 25, but your joints say otherwise. The day begins, and with it comes chores, labor, more scratching, and the most romantic part of the medieval experience, marriage. Let's say you're single, not for long, because love in the Middle Ages is less about moonlit walks and more about cows, or pigs, or land, or your father's promise sealed with a handshake and a mug of ale when you were still teething. Marriages are alliances, transactions, and your opinion, optional. You remember your own. You stood in the field behind the church wearing your best tunic, the one without holes under both arms, and tried not to sweat as the priest spoke over the buzzing flies. Your new spouse, let's call them Lucky, looked equally terrified and equally itchy. There was no ring, just a hand-fasting ribbon, a shared cup, and a contract written, if at all, on parchment that now lines a chicken coop. The wedding feast was boiled turnips and watered-down ale. A lute player showed up halfway through, played 2 songs, and left with the cheese wheels someone stole from the reeve. Then came the wedding night, which, let's be honest, is not what the poems describe. You share a bed that smells like wet hay, candle wax, and 3 generations of foot sweat. There is no privacy. Your siblings are asleep on the floor next to you, and the neighbor's goat keeps trying to eat your blanket. You pretend not to notice. Your spouse, also pretending, mutters something about being tired. You nod vigorously. Sleep wins. Historians still argue how affectionate or arranged most marriages were. Sure, some couples grew fond of each other, eventually, but others quietly endured, or loudly didn't. You hear the shouting through thin walls. Not everyone gets a love story. And speaking of thin walls, one night you overheard your cousin explaining how his wife tried to poison him with spoiled fish. He laughed about it. She didn't. Still, marriage isn't just about 2 people. It's about roles. If you're a man, you're expected to provide, chop wood, plough fields, fix roofs, occasionally hold opinions at the alehouse. If you're a woman, congratulations, you do everything else. Cooking, cleaning, sewing, childbirth, milking, bartering, bandaging, keeping the household from literal collapse while also being told you're too emotional. And the bed, always shared, even when it's cold, or crowded, or filled with fleas. You curl around each other at night, not out of romance, but survival. Body heat matters more than whispered sweet nothings. You do share some tender moments, though. A glance across the table, a smile during chores, a shoulder pressed close during a storm, and sometimes, a soft laugh in the dark when you both can't sleep, and the rain sounds like a song on the roof. It's not passion, but it's real. Over time, you fall into rhythm. You know each other's footsteps. You share secrets under the blanket. You learn what makes them snore and what makes them smile. It's less fireworks and more warm coals. And honestly, that's enough. You help raise children if you're lucky enough to keep them alive. You bury losses together. You plant crops side by side. You argue about bread. You survive plagues, taxes, bad weather, and relatives who won't move out. You age early, wrinkle early, and lose teeth early. But you do it together. Until one day, one of you doesn't wake up, and the bed feels larger, colder, heavier. You keep sleeping on your side anyway, out of habit. Maybe one day you'll remarry, maybe not. But until then, you tuck yourself into the middle of the straw, whisper a soft goodnight to the empty space beside you, and listen to the wind outside, thinking, it wasn't always easy, but it was yours. You squat beside the hearth with a sliver of polished tin in your hand, squinting at your own face. It's not great. Your skin's pale from lack of sun, yet somehow still blotchy. A constellation of freckles, redness, and mystery bumps has taken up permanent residence on your cheeks. There's a bit of something crusty near your left ear and a suspicious rash crawling along your jawline like it's exploring new territory. And your eyebrows? Bold, untamed, possibly sentient. But you're not giving up. Not today. Because today, you're going to try and look good. Welcome to medieval beauty hacks, a smorgasbord of burnt herbs, questionable ointments, and what we'll generously call innovation. You start by dabbing your cheeks with a bit of crushed beetroot mixed with animal fat. It gives a reddish tint. Not exactly a glow, but at least you look less like you've just risen from the dead. Your lips. Soot mixed with grease. Bold choice. A little gritty. And your eyes? Ash from the fire, carefully smudged onto the lid with your pinky finger. The look is somewhere between mysterious woods witch and fell into a chimney. Next up, the hair. It's stringy, greasy, tied back with a strip of cloth that used to be a curtain. You rub in some rosemary oil. Okay, more like crushed rosemary and a bit of leftover goose fat. And hope it smells more herbal spa than salad that sat out too long. You twist it into a bun. One strand sticks out. You leave it. That's flair. Historians still argue how much time medieval people actually spent on grooming. While the average peasant didn't have a vanity table, some still took pride in their appearance. Looking clean, tidy, and slightly less grimy than your neighbors could improve your marriage prospects, or at least keep the gossip down. Wealthier women used face creams made of lead and vinegar. Yes, lead. The whiter your face, the higher your status, because tan skin meant labor and pale skin meant leisure. So, people literally poisoned themselves in pursuit of glow. You thankfully can't afford that. Instead, you make do with your herbal poultice, crushed daisies, old rainwater, and the petal of a rose you found half-eaten by a goat. You smear it on your forehead and wait 10 minutes. It dries like concrete. When you peel it off, you lose 2 eyebrow hairs and gain hope. Your neighbor, Agnes, swears by fermented snail slime. She swears it tightens everything. You tried it once. You smelled like swamp death for 3 days. Never again. Then there's the teeth. You scrub them with a rag dipped in salt and sage ash. It helps a little. You smile. It's sincere, which counts for something. As for scent, perfume doesn't exist. Not really. What you have is a sachet of dried herbs pinned under your tunic. Lavender, mint, rosemary. Anything to mask the scent of living in a barn with ambitions. And if that fails, swan dung, yes, swan dung, mixed with rose water and rubbed into the skin as an early deodorant. You read about it in a monk's herbal scroll once. You chose to keep your body odor instead. Still, for all the strangeness, there's something meditative about the process. Washing your face with cold water from a clay basin. Running a comb, made of bone, thick with broken teeth, through tangled hair. Tying ribbons made of repurposed cloth. Scratching dirt from under your nails with a chicken feather. It's not about vanity, it's about dignity. When everything else is out of your control, weather, food, death, taxes, you can still choose to look like a version of yourself that feels alive. You pull on your cleanest tunic. It has only 2 patches and a neckline that sits almost symmetrically. You lace it carefully, tug it straight, brush straw off your shoulders. You look in the tin again, still blotchy, still tired. But you see something else. You, holding it together with ashes, grease, and sheer defiance. Outside, the village gathers for the feast of Saint Agnes. It's not glamorous, just a few pies, a banner made of old rags, and a chance to not work for 2 hours. People mill around the square, laughing, dancing, pretending they don't smell like a barn. You step into the sunlight. Someone compliments your hair. You smile. Ash-streaked, slightly snaggle-toothed, but genuine. And for the first time in days, you don't feel like a walking collection of chores. You feel beautiful. In your own weird, medieval way. You're woken by the bells, not church bells, warning bells. You sit up so fast your head smacks the low ceiling beam, and now you're both confused and concussed. Around you, the cottage stirs in panic. Your mother's already at the window. Your uncle's grabbing the axe he keeps beneath the bed. The younger kids, wide-eyed and whimpering. You scramble to the door and swing it open just enough to peek. Smoke. Not the comforting kind that curls from chimneys, but thick, angry plumes climbing into the dawn sky like something out of a nightmare. You hear it before you see it. Hooves. Dozens of them. And shouts. And the crack of splintering wood. Raiders. Again. You don't ask who they are. Could be bandits, soldiers turned scavengers, or a rival lordsmen reminding your village of who truly owns your loyalty. Historians still argue how often rural communities faced raids. But when you live here, it doesn't matter what the scrolls say. Any time it happens, it's too often. You're not trained, you're not armed, and you're not brave. You run. Everyone does. Your mother grabs the smallest child and bolts through the back door. Your sister pulls you by the sleeve toward the woods. Behind you, someone's screaming. You don't look back. You sprint barefoot across uneven ground, dodging roots and ducking under branches. You scrape your shin on a rock. It stings, bleeds, doesn't slow you. The forest is your refuge. Dense, dark, and deeply confusing. You know parts of it. You also know that wolves live here, and outlaws. But right now, the forest is the better option. You crouch beneath a fallen log, trying to quiet your breathing. Around you, others huddle in silence. Neighbors, friends, the miller's daughter, who once swore she'd never run from anything. She's shaking. The noise fades. You wait. Then finally, someone whispers, "They're gone." Not a cheer, not relief, just a flat statement, like saying the rain has stopped, except now the damage is already done. You emerge slowly, feet numb, heart pounding. You walk back toward the village. What's left of it? Roofs are smoking. The barn is collapsed. One cottage is burning still, unattended. You see chickens scattered, feathers in the mud. You don't see the oxen, or the baker's dog, or the reeve. He's gone too. People begin picking through the mess, gathering what wasn't taken, patting ash from singed cloth, comforting crying children. No one is surprised. This is just part of life. You join the others in forming a bucket line from the well, dousing smouldering wood. You don't ask questions like why us, or when will this end? You've learnt those questions don't help. You rebuild, or you try. Because the real tragedy isn't the fire or the missing livestock. It's what you lost before the fire, your sense of stability, that thin illusion that your home, your family, your life had a little bubble of safety around it. The bubbles popped. You sleep that night in a partially collapsed room, your bedroll pulled close to the wall. No fire, no door, just a blanket, a bruised body, and a heart too tired to beat quickly. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still you. That counts. The next morning, you and your uncle walk the perimeter, collecting scattered tools and mending fence posts. He's silent. You are too. But when he stops and hands you a piece of bread from his pocket, half crushed, mostly stale, you eat it gratefully. A small act of care in a world that often forgets how. You wonder if the raiders will come again. You don't ask. You just plan quietly. Where to run next time, what to grab first, where to hide the good boots. And then you go back to your chores. Because in medieval life, you don't have the luxury to pause for long. The first snow arrives like a whispered threat. It starts as a dusting, light, delicate, almost beautiful as it settles over the thatched roofs and the bare trees. You stare up at the grey sky and pretend it's charming. But everyone knows what's coming. Winter. And it's not the cozy kind with cocoa and candles. It's the kind that tests how well you prepared and how long you'll survive. Your breath comes out in thick puffs. You pull your tunic tighter, wrapping your wool shawl twice around your neck. But it doesn't help much. The cold bites through layers like it's personal. Your boots are stuffed with straw, your fingers already cracked, and your nose hasn't stopped running since dawn. Inside your cottage, the hearth has become the sun. Everyone crowds around it. Grandparents, children, the dog, even the cat that usually hates everyone. The fire spits and pops, barely enough to warm your toes, but enough to give the illusion of hope. The pantry, almost bare. You did your best. Dried beans, smoked meat, a sack of turnips that smells suspicious, but you know it won't be enough. It never is. Your mother's already stretching the stew with stale bread and water. Tonight's dinner tastes like boiled wood shavings with a hint of regret. And that's before the rats try to join in. You catch one in the act, nibbling at a crust. You throw a boot, miss. It flips you off with its tail and scampers into the thatch. Your uncle swears he saw frostbite on his toes. He holds one foot to the fire like it's an offering. It's red, swollen, and clearly suffering. But he refuses to stop chopping wood. Because without that firewood, you all freeze. Historians still argue whether medieval winters were harsher than today's, or if people just suffered more because of poor insulation and limited resources. Either way, the experience is brutal. There's no central heating, no fluffy blankets, just animal pelts, ragged wool, and body heat. At night, everyone piles into the same bed, siblings, elders, and pets included. Privacy is frozen out entirely. You once tried sleeping alone near the door, woke up feeling like your spine had turned to glass. Outside, the snow deepens. Your village becomes muffled. Every sound feels distant. The usual buzz of gossip and chickens is replaced by silence, and the occasional sneeze. Illness spreads like wildfire in this cold. Coughs echo through the village like grim little metronomes. Your neighbor, Tom, has been sick for days. He's curled up on a straw pallet, mumbling to himself and sweating through his tunic. Someone suggested leeches. Someone else suggested prayer. Neither seems to be working. The worst part, you're starting to feel it too. That ache in your bones, the scratch in your throat. You tell yourself it's just the cold, but deep down, you know. Still, you help with chores. You feed the chickens, break the ice in the water trough, sweep the hearth, rub your hands raw trying to wash clothes in near-frozen water. Every task takes twice as long and yields half the results. And yet, you do it. Because stopping means letting the cold win. There are moments of strange beauty, the way frost crystals form along the window's edge like tiny feathers. The silence of a snow-blanketed morning. The way the stars seem closer, sharper, in the crisp air. One night, someone starts singing. It's quiet at first, a lullaby. Then others join in, low, hesitant voices, until the cottage hums with warmth the fire can't provide. It doesn't last long. The baby wakes up screaming, the stew boils over, and someone sneezes directly into the flames. But for that one moment, it felt like you could survive anything. You sleep that night in a tangle of limbs and wool, You dream of summer, of walking barefoot, of apples, of warmth. You wake to snow falling through a hole in the roof. You sigh, patch it later. Right now, there's bread to stretch, fire to stoke, and hope to ration. Because winter isn't a season here. It's a test, and you're not sure how many questions you can get wrong. You're up before the sun, again. This time, it's not the cold that wakes you. It's the bell from the chapel. It tolls low and slow, 5 times. That's not for morning prayer. That's for a death. You sit up in the dark, pulling the wool blanket tighter. Across the room, your uncle's already lacing his boots. No one says anything, but you all know who it was. Tom. The coughing had turned to rattling, then to silence. You trudge out into the chill, joining the small procession gathering near the chapel. The priest stands at the front, his breath a white cloud, hands folded over a copy of the Psalter so worn it's more leather than scripture. A few villagers clutch candles. Others bring shovels. You carry nothing, just your presence. There's no coffin, just a rough linen shroud tied at both ends. His feet poke against the fabric. Someone mutters that it looks like a sack of potatoes. You're not sure whether to laugh or feel terrible. You do both. Quietly. Burials in the Middle Ages aren't grand, unless you're a noble or a saint. For everyone else, it's simple, fast, and grounded, literally. The grave's already dug, half frozen, smelling of mud and finality. The priest mumbles a Latin prayer. You understand none of it, but the rhythm feels right, comforting, like a lullaby for the end of a very long, very hard life. They lower Tom in. The thud of dirt landing on linen echoes more than it should. No one cries. They just stand there, hats in hand, thinking about how close they all are to that same hole. Back home, your mother lights a beeswax candle for his soul. It's the good kind, the one she saves for serious things. It flickers bravely against the drafty wall. You sit down, suddenly exhausted, not from the cold, not from hunger, but from the nearness of death. Because here, death isn't a stranger. It's a neighbor, a regular. You've seen it up close. A child coughing through the night, a fall from a ladder, a birth gone wrong, a blade too deep, a fever too high. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't explain. It just happens. You once knew a woman who lived to 40. People whispered she had magic bones. She still limped like every step was borrowed. Most don't make it past their mid-30s. If you do, you're already an elder. A survivor. Historians still debate exact medieval life expectancy. Some say it was dragged down by high infant mortality. Others argue many adults lived into their 50s. Either way, you don't count years here. You count winters survived. Grief looks different here too. There's no therapist, no time to process, just chores. After the burial, Tom's daughter goes back to milking goats. His widow slices turnips. The rhythm doesn't stop for mourning, but people remember. Not with framed photos or funeral speeches, but with stories. Someone mentions how Tom once tricked a Lord's steward by swapping a pig for a particularly hairy dog. Everyone chuckles. Someone else swears he knew how to whistle so loud it startled geese 2 villages away. The mood lifts. A little. Later that evening, your uncle raises a mug of ale. To Tom, he says. Everyone echoes it quietly, and for a moment it feels warm again. The fire glows, bread is shared, life continues, but when you lie down that night, you make sure to pull the blanket all the way over your chest, just in case. You close your eyes, whisper a wordless prayer, and drift off wondering. When it's your turn, who will carry the shovel? It's market day. You wake to the sound of carts rattling down the lane, chickens squawking indignantly, and someone arguing loudly about turnip prices before breakfast. There's energy in the air, different from the usual fog of chores and survival. This is commerce. This is possibility. You pull on your best tunic, meaning the one without new stains, and tie your belt with a bit of flair. You even comb your hair, a little, It mostly obeys. Today's not about survival, it's about trade. The village green is already filling up. Carts have rolled in from neighbouring hamlets. There's a woman selling eels in a bucket. A bald man shouting about miracle onions. A child tugging a goat on a rope that clearly has no interest in being bartered. You bring your goods. 2 small sacks of dried apples and a bundle of wool cloth your mother dyed with onion skin. You're hoping to swap for salt. Maybe a chunk of cheese. If you're really lucky, something sweet. Commerce in medieval life is chaotic. There's no cash register, no change counted into your hand. It's barter, haggling, and educated guesses. A thumb on the scale, a wink in exchange for a crooked deal. You set up beside a woman with a crate of wooden spoons. She smiles with 3 teeth. Trade you 1 spoon for a strip of wool? You counter with 2 spoons. She cackles. I like you. Done deal. A few feet away, a monk is preaching loudly about the dangers of greed, while holding a basket full of dried figs. You suspect he's not giving them away. Historians still argue about the prevalence of money in rural economies. Silver pennies exist, sure, but few peasants handle them. Most people trade goods, labor, or services. Coin is for taxes or lords. You hear laughter, genuine, easy, rare. A boy wins a game of dice. His opponent accuses witchcraft. No one takes it seriously. The boy pockets a lump of bread and bows like a king. Elsewhere, a woman's offering charms woven from straw. For luck, she says, or fertility, depending on how you hang it. You don't ask where she got that wisdom. There's a juggler too, wearing bells and a hat that's more enthusiasm than fabric. He tosses 3 apples and a turnip with remarkable skill, then asks for coin, or cheese, or flattery. He's not picky. The market is loud, alive, human. It's also where gossip flourishes. You overhear whispers about the neighbouring lord's daughter running off with a scribe, about a travelling merchant who claims he saw a dragon's skull, about a nearby abbey brewing beer strong enough to cure sadness and cause temporary blindness. Some stories might even be true. You trade the rest of your cloth for a wheel of crumbly cheese and 2 tiny jars of honey. You haven't tasted honey in months. You open one then and there, dip a finger in, and let it melt on your tongue. For 1 glorious second, you forget you live in a drafty cottage with a leaking roof and a rat with its own name. Then, a goat sneezes on your boot, and reality returns. You walk past a young man carving charms into wood, runes for protection. He says they're Norse. He also says he's part Viking. You highly doubt both things, but you nod respectfully. A woman sells fabric from France. It's coarse, oddly shiny, and smells like fish. Silk, she says proudly. You don't correct her. As afternoon fades, the wind picks up. You gather your trades into a sack, sling it over your shoulder, and glance one last time at the bustling scene. It won't last long. Soon, the green will be empty. Back to routine, back to surviving. But for these few hours, it felt like something more. Not just survival, not just mud and chores and cold hands, but exchange, ideas, goods, laughter. You head home with sticky fingers, tired feet, and just enough salt to make the next few stews taste slightly less like despair. And as you pass the juggler again, he gives you a wink and tosses you a turnip. It hits your shoulder. You both laugh. Spring doesn't arrive. It slinks in, like it's not sure it's welcome. One day, the ground thaws just enough to release the smell of damp earth and old straw. A few green things peek through the dead leaves. Hesitant. The sun stays a minute longer. The wind loses its teeth. And you realize something. You made it. Barely. Bitterly. But still. Winter didn't claim you, nor the illness, nor the raid, nor the accidents or hunger or shadows in the woods. You've earned another chance, though you wouldn't call it a reward, just a continuation. You step outside barefoot and sink into the mud. It's cold and gross, but it's not ice. You take that as a victory. Life stirs again. The hens lay. The goats bleat with new urgency. A baby's cry rings out across the village, not from sickness this time, but from being born. You spot the midwife walking away, wiping her hands on her apron, humming something low and ancient. You smile, a real one. Today the task is clearing the field. You take your spade, handle worn, blade chipped, and begin slicing into the soil. It's heavy, uncooperative. You curse a little, then laugh at yourself. You remember the first time you tried this. You couldn't lift the tool without falling over. Now you swing it like it's an extension of your arm. You've changed. Somehow, through the cold and the coughing and the hunger and the endless cycle of wash, grind, sleep, repeat, you've become something new, someone capable, not heroic, not magical, just durable. There's a kind of pride in that. You glance at the path beyond the village. You've walked it hundreds of times. Each time it leads somewhere uncertain, sometimes to the woods, sometimes to another village. Once it led to a merchant who told you stories of Venice, of glass that shines like stars and food with spices. You didn't believe him, not really. But part of you hopes he comes back. You'd trade him everything in your pouch for a taste of cinnamon. The seasons will keep turning. More work, more dirt, more hard nights and strange mornings, more aching backs and splinters and songs sung off key, but also more honey, more market days, more laughter around the fire, more kisses behind the church wall, more jokes about turnips. You've lived through the worst of it. For now, that's how it works here. Not triumph, not comfort, just persistence. And with each passing day, you become a little stronger, a little wiser, a little more of yourself. You know now, you wouldn't last a day in medieval times. Not if you stayed soft, not if you expected fairness or convenience or even clean socks. But if you adapted, if you leaned in, you might just make it through the week. You walk to the stream, splash cold water on your face, and look up at the sky. It's still grey, but it doesn't scare you anymore, because you're still here, still you, still enough. And now, let the fire in your imagination die down to soft embers. Let the sounds of the village fade, the clink of iron, the lowing of cattle, the echo of distant bells. Let the ache in your hands, the chill in your toes, the weight of all those turnips lift away. You've walked barefoot through frost, ducked beneath a burning roof, argued over stale bread, and swatted away rats with too much personality. You've seen births, burials, bargains, and bizarre herbal remedies that should probably be illegal. But more than anything, you endured. Not because it was easy, not because you were strong every moment, but because you never stopped moving. Even when the world threw wolves, winter, and questionable stew at your feet, you kept walking. So, as you lie back now, real-world blanket pulled up to your chin, let yourself sink into softness. Let the mattress hold you, like the feather bed you never had in that cottage. You're not in the Middle Ages anymore. You're warm, you're safe, and your boots don't leak. Breathe slow. Let your thoughts drift like smoke curling from a chimney on a calm spring morning. There's nothing to do now. No sheep to wrangle, no potatoes to peel, no bells to answer, only rest, only quiet, only sleep.